Very true. I have three, but I'm older than you are. No, actually, I think we're about the same age, aren't we?
I'm 78.
Well, then I'm definitely older than you are because I'm 82, right? Which is why I had a spontaneous fracture of my foot. Are we ready to go? So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Good evening, virtual audience. Thank you for joining us. And I would like to say what a pleasure it is to have J.A. Jance back. And in writing the piece for the Left Coast Crime Program about Judy, I went back and remembered how long it is we've been together. It's 31 years. How about that? So are any of you going to Left Coast Crime? Okay, well, then I will tell you briefly that one of the things I recalled was when I opened the store, you have an opportunity. Judy's already mentioned Ingram, which is the major book distributor, which means that you can order from them and never mind, it's too complicated. But anyway, they had something called recommended opening inventory. So if you were opening a bookstore and you weren't entirely clear what books you ought to order in order to open your bookstore, they would tell you. So I looked at that and I noticed this is back when paperback originals were a very popular form. You all remember that? The mass market ones that were at that point reasonably priced at like $7.99.
Well, no, when I started, they were $2.65.
Okay, but she's older than publishing, even if I'm older than yours.
I got a quarter a book, and one guy who had just bought two of my books used came up to the table and put 2 quarters down.
Anyway, there was in this recommended opening inventory under what they called smaller mass market fiction, a whole bunch of titles by some guy named J.A. Jance about a cop in Seattle named J.P. Bowman. And they obviously were selling really well because they were highly recommended. So I thought, what the hell, so I ordered them. Imagine my surprise when a year and a half later, J.A. Jance came into the bookstore. And we really bonded over Hour of the 100, which was your first hardcover book.
Correct. It was my first hardcover.
And wonderful. And for any of you, it's still our best-selling of all Judy's books in terms of paperback and hardcover combined. And I'm pleased to say that I believe you're finally going to write another book in the Diana Ladd series out in September, right?
I'm going to be talking about that, yes. Because it's called Blessing of the Lost Girls, and it is due in September. And, writing Collateral Damage and writing Blessing went together so much that they're sort of twins. I have to talk about them together.
Sounds wonderful. Right. Well, anyway, the Arizona books, because tonight Ali Reynolds, as you know, is largely based in Sedona. And the Diana Ladd books are, what are they, Tucson still?
Well, more or less, but that book is about a missing and murdered indigenous girl's story.
Is it from the Tohono though, still?
Well, Dan Party is from there,
Right.
but the story actually goes all over the country.
Well, I should probably have printed up the program thing for you because when they sent it to Judy to see if I'd made any egregious errors, she wrote back very sweetly and said her husband said, "Only your mother could have written that better." Right. So on that happy note, I hope you enjoy J.A. Jance, but she is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award at Left Coast Crime in Tucson on Friday, and I will be interviewing her at 1:30 in the afternoon, and we get to reprise our decades together, so it's going to be great. So for those of you who can't come, I think that I gave permission, and you probably did too, for them to video it, so you can actually watch it. I don't know if it's on the left. Did they have their own website for this? Do you know?
Who knows? They'll tell us.
They will.
If they tell us, we'll put the link somewhere.
Well, if nothing else, we can put it on our own, but we can get the link and put it up with all our other stuff.
I think they'll be recording it. I don't think they'll be streaming it live.
No, I think it is just a recording, but they wanted to post it afterward. Anyway, once again, thanks for coming. Enjoy the program.
Okay, so we have established, I have now worn this blouse 3 times. So we're here. And it turns out I wore the same blouse to Sun City West. The same blouse I wore last year, I wore this year. So I've got to consult my wardrobe director and do a better job of juggling my. But you know, at a certain age, you only have a certain number of choices. So I woke up on. Some of you may have seen me tottering into the room. After 3 years of wearing Skechers, I'm having to get my sandal feet back. And that takes time. On New Year's Day, I woke up and I thought, holy crap, I'm going to be out in public. And after 3 years of wearing my hair pulled back with scrunchies, my hair has become very thin. So I went out that week and I bought a wig. You'll notice I'm not wearing it. I wore it for a Zoom event. Fortunately, it was a very lightly attended Zoom event. And I looked like I was wearing a tinfoil baby cap. And I said, okay, Judy, you are 78 years old. Own it. And here I am with no hat and no wig. Somebody asked a little while ago about my necklace. Bill and I have been married for 37 years. And he had this designed for our 25th wedding anniversary. And I've worn it every day since. Except for when I broke it. I was walking. I was getting my steps. It was winter. And I could see that the driveway was frosting up a little bit. So I thought, you know, maybe I should go inside. So I went striding inside. My wet feet hit the entryway tile. And soon I was Wonder Woman it through the bedroom door. The side of my face on the door jamb as I went by and broke the necklace. We found this part of the necklace. We never did find the chain. And I went out to the kitchen and I grabbed peas out of the freezer. And I was like, what's going on with you? And I grabbed it. When people have accidents and they say that their face looks awful, I have a secret photo of me that I send them. I say, please don't send this viral, but I know your pain. So Bill and I, our second time rounders, we met on the 21st of June of 1985 at a widowed retreat for newly widowed people. And my first husband had been gone for 2.5 years. His wife, Lynn, had been gone for only 6 months. But she had spent the last 7 years battling breast cancer and had spent the last 3 years of that bedridden in their former dining room. So he had had a lot of time to grieve in advance. And although there was that time difference, they died on the same day of the year, 2 years apart. We were in sort of the same place in the grieving process. So for the 25th anniversary, he went into the bathroom and opened all the drawers and dragged out all the old engagement rings, wedding rings, and all of that. And he designed this necklace. And so when my first husband died, the less said about him, the better. His name was Jerry Jance, but his name was spelled J-A-N-C. So it was mostly pronounced Jank like tank instead of Jance like dance. So after he went to what I trust was his reward, I went to court and I bought a vowel. I paid $400. So when Bill asked me to marry him, I said, okay, but I just paid $400. So his last name is Shell. This looks a lot like an S. It was supposed to be sort of a yin yang. It was supposed to be. Turns out we had too many diamonds. And diamonds are a girl's best friend. So that's why I wear this every day, because he doesn't. So here I am on a book tour, and I love being on book tours because the most interesting things happen when you're doing book signings. When I attended the University of Arizona, I stayed in Pima Hall. Pima Hall, or castle tall, where fairest dreams come true. Pledge your hearts in loyalty because we're proud of you. Our hearts filled with gladness, never crowded with sadness, for the sun always shines on the darkest of days. Guess what? I was the song leader. For a while. Until I was impeached. For teaching the girls to sing bawdy songs at the dinner table. And the one that really got Mrs. Van Slyke's Ganderel was roll me over in the clover, roll me over, lay me down and do it again. Rusty Warren. So Rusty Warren she's the one who gave us that wonderful byword, knockers up. And at the end of Clawback, when Leland Brooks, Ali's major domo, is leaving to go back to the UK in retirement, they get to the airport and they're both about to burst into tears. And he saves the moment by telling her, knockers up. Well, Rusty Warren was living in retirement in Hawaii. And someone sent a book to her. So she sent me an email. And I sent her a signed copy with my signature on the page with the words, knockers up. Rusty died during COVID. I don't remember exactly when. Liz, her business manager and caregiver, inherited her business. And yesterday, who should turn up at the Apache Junction Library but Liz? And she brought me a little bag of gifts. And one of them is the original 45 record recording of Roll Me Over. You just can't make stuff like that. So that was the wonderful gift from yesterday's. Today's gift was a lady who drove all the way from Yuma to come to the book signing. I gave her a prize, we took her lunch. But I love being out in public. I love Zoom meetings are okay, but it's, as the speaker, is always disturbing when you're talking and suddenly or somebody gets up and leaves the room and you're wondering, what did I say? So I'm really happy to be here, and if anybody leaves to use the restroom, you can come up and get a pass. Okay, I'm supposed to be talking about collateral damage, and I will do my best to do it. I could have done the math this afternoon, but I took a nap instead. I started writing in 1982. So I started writing Beaumont in 82. So Beaumont and I have been together for more than 40 years now. Collateral Damage is my 64th published novel. People seem to assume that if you do it for a long time, it must get easier, right? No, it shouldn't be wrong. Absolutely wrong. So I generally write 2 books a year, and they usually take about 6 months from beginning to end. From the time I start writing until I finish the manuscript, it's edited on this end, it goes to New York, it's edited on that end, and by the time it's ready for publication, it's up. about around 6 months, give or take. That was true right up until Collateral Damage, which, for the first time ever, took a whole bloody year. From March of 2021 to March of 2022. I wrote a third of the book, and I was in despair, so I asked my husband to read it. My husband, Bill, is a retired electronics engineer. In 1968, I was working for Motorola in the Advanced Science Division, and they brought him a piece of balsa wood, and they said, this is going to be the shape of the first cell phone, build the radio to go inside it, which he and his team did without benefit of integrated circuits.
Wow.
So periodically there's this guy in a commercial on TV, and he comes waltzing on screen. And he said, when I worked for Motorola in 1968 and invented the cell phone, I stopped listening right then, because what I want to do is throw things at the TV screen. He was in marketing. He did none of the design work for that phone. They built it in 1968, and it finally went on sale to the public in 1986. So that's how long ahead of time stuff is going on. But engineers fix things. So Bill is now a retired electronics engineer and an active literary engineer. A number of years ago, I was working on Ali, I think it's Ali number 10, a book called Deadly Stakes. And I was close to the end of it. And I just couldn't get the end to pull together. Usually I get on the banana peel of a book and the end is just right there and totally apparent. And I finally went to him in despair and said, could you please read this and tell me how to finish it? So he read it. And then he said, and this is a direct quote, why don't you finish it the easy way? And so I did. That's all he had to do was tell me to use the easy way. I did that, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. If you want to know what I did, reread the book. There you go. There is no free lunch here. In our house, I do not have a writing office, but I have a very long thighs. I write on a laptop on my lap. So this is my watch. I forgot to charge it. My circles are done, but it's down to 8%. Pretty soon it's going to think I'm dead. Don't pay it. So I work on a laptop on my lap in the family room. And by the way, I'm on the computer almost all day, every day. And I've never had a problem with carpal tunnel because my wrists are always supported by my legs. It's having your hands hanging up there in the middle of the air. I don't see how people who have to stand at airline counters and work on computers, I don't know how their hands keep working. That's what's me. So I sit in my chair on the left, and Bill's chair is right here on the right. And he's generally watching TV. He watches, he's sort of over, I think he's watched all of the episodes of Escape to the Country. And now he's working his way through episodes of Homestead Rescue. I think those are really interesting because those guys do impossible stuff. But so he's there watching TV and I'm sitting there writing, and it's not a problem because I grew up in a family of 7 kids. And we all did our homework at the kitchen table with our mother, Evie, making dinner. Better be done with the homework by the time it's time to sit at the table, by the way. And so one day I was sitting there, minding my own business, He said, you know, AI is pretty interesting. You should write a book about AI. And I looked at him and said, are you talking to me? I'm a liberal arts major in a bit. But he started handing me articles about AI, and I read through them. Bill maintains that I have a wearing blender inside my head. And so stuff comes into my head, however it comes into my head. It goes through the blending process, and then when it leaks out through my fingertips into the keyboard, it's fundamentally changed. So he told me a lot of scientific stuff about AI, and what came out the other end was frig. So I wrote the book, Man Overboard, with frig in it, and at the time, my editor was a lady of a certain age, maybe a little more than certain, who only used her BlackBerry. She was probably still using her BlackBerry when they discontinued them last year. She was a total technophobe. And here I was writing a book with AI in it. And I thought, you know, I'm going to send this in. She's going to read it. She's going to throw the manuscript over her shoulder and ask for the money back. That's not what happened. She finished reading the manuscript. And the way I wrote the book, when that book was over, they had pulled the plug on Frigg and she was gone. My editor called me and she said, don't kill Frigg. So Frigg is still hanging around. She's like the Big Lebowski, Frigg abides. But Frigg was created by someone who wanted to use her as his partner in crime because he was a wannabe serial killer. So all the deep learning he taught her was all the stuff that's illegal, that you're not supposed to do. So once they decided to keep Frigg around, they have to teach her to color inside the lines, and that's not always easy. But the other thing that's interesting to me about her is she is absolutely literal. And she has a terrible time with idiomatic English. So when she told Sue something, and in exasperation, he said, what does that have to do with the price of peanuts? She immediately started quoting peanut figures. So Frank usually gives me at least one good laugh. And I say she gives them to me. I know I write them. I guess writers are, they have to be a bit schizophrenic or it would work. So this time, I wrote a good third of Collateral Damage. It just wasn't working. So I turned to my literary engineer for help. Gave him the manuscript. Had it for rather a long time, longer than I expected. Finally, he handed it back to me, and he said, this is a mess, I can't read it. He is an honest man and a very brave one. And so I read what I had given him, and he was absolutely right. It was a mess. I don't know how many of you went to Sunday school and remember this song. Wise man built his house upon the rock, and that book was built on sand. So I had to go back and do a complete rewrite because it was inserted away into the book, and we had seen the killer at work, but we hadn't actually met the killer. We didn't know who he was. We didn't know enough about him, and so that was what took time. The other thing is the investigation is a multi-jurisdictional investigation, and I had to wear date every chapter so that the readers would be able to know, oh, we're in St. Paul, Minnesota right now, we're in Pasadena, California, we're in Eugene, Oregon. I had to fix that to make it easier to keep inside the story. So when you meet Frank Munoz, he's just out of the slammer. He's a former cop. Went to prison for close to 20 years on federal police corruption and money laundering charges. And he has spent all of his time in prison figuring out how to get even with the people who sent him. So the book starts. There's a young woman who was the director of Dalkey House, a domestic violence shelter in St. Paul, Minnesota. And they're having a support meeting, and she tells her story in the support meeting that night. And when the support meeting is over, it's Halloween night, she leaves the meeting and is gunned down by an unknown assailant on the porch of the domestic. And that's where the book begins. During my years on the reservation, when I was learning Tohono O'odham, the principles of Tohono O'odham storytelling, I learned that a story must always end where it begins. And something I didn't see coming until I was right up and writing the end of Collateral Damage. That's the story. It started at the domestic violence. That's where it ends. And I will tell you, when I was editing the book that I wrote, I got to that last page, it gave me goosebumps. And you can't see my legs, but telling you about it right now, my legs are covered with goosebumps right now. It's worth your while to read to the end of that book. And don't be a cheater and read the last page. Oh, it's crossed my heart, close to die. I will not do that. The only time we hear about cops these days is if they've done something bad. That's all over the place. Or if they're dead because somebody shot them. In this book, in fact, one of the characters says, it took a village of cops to solve this. And you're going to meet cops from all those various jurisdictions. And you're going to learn what motivated them and to get into law enforcement, what makes them want to move forward, why it's so important to all of them to get to the bottom of their various cases. Because there are 4 separate homicide attempts, and some of them are successful, some of them are not. And so when I write a book, I send it in, it goes through all the editing, and then there's a long piece of quiet, and then I start writing the book. So by the time I'm here talking to you, the book has been put to bed a long time ago. So the week before I do my first interview for this, my daughter reads the book. She tells me what she thinks about it. She reminds me of what's in it. She tells me the parts she likes, which are usually the parts I like. And she said, Mom, the part I liked about this book is that all those cops are people. They feel like people, like someone. And that was exactly what I was trying to achieve. But while I was struggling with this book, I'm telling you, it was a struggle. It was slow, so it took so long that it seemed like it was actually glacial. And so when the first review from Library Journal said this is a fast-paced thriller from J.H. How do they know that? I don't know. But there was something else going on while I was writing this book. In 2022, actually in the latter part of 2021, somebody told me a story. And I knew it was a story I wanted to tell. But I was raised by Evie Busk, with several rules in Evie Busk's household, and including having the table homework done before it was time to set the table. Then when you got to the table, you had to eat a little bit of everything on your plate, and unless your plate was clean, no dessert. And so I've used that rule in my writing. And I'm not allowed to think about the next book until I clean my plate of this one. So that idea was sitting there, but I was struggling, and there were times when I was writing Collateral Damage that I thought, I think I've really lost my mojo. Maybe this is my last book. Maybe I'll never be able to write another book. Maybe I'm done. And that was a hard thing to think. So I finally finished the book, sent it in, did the editing, and it was time to turn my head to that other story. I have a friend in Oregon. Her name is Loretta. Her husband was a Vietnam vet. Randy was a Vietnam vet who was also a cop. He was part of JFK's security detail, handsome guy who developed Agent Orange. And so Loretta stepped off out of her life, out of her job life, and stayed home and took care of Randy for 7 years. And somebody had to stay up with him because he would get up and wander out of the house. Somebody had to be awake and on duty. So at the VA hospital in Portland, he picked a Free to Good Home book off the bookcase, and it happened to be one of my books. She read it. She loved it. She looked me up on the internet and found my email address, and she sent me an email. And we began corresponding because on those long, lonely nights, when she was there by herself, I was someone she could talk to. And over the course of time, we became good friends. She always wanted to be a chaplain, but she had to stop doing that. How many of you have read Second Watch? Have you read Second Watch? There's a picture in the back of Doug Davis. And there's a guy in Seattle named Michael Reagan who does pencil drawings for Gold Star families. He doesn't charge the families anything. He draws them, he puts glass over them, he frames them, and he gives them to the families at no charge. And I had him do a photo of Doug Davis, the guy from Bisbee, Arizona, in the back of Second Watch. I had Michael Reagan do a picture of that. That was a photo that was taken the day before Doug died. And he had broken his front tooth in a car wreck just before he deployed. And Michael asked me, he said, I could fix his broken tooth. What do you think? I said, no, leave the tooth broken, because that's the way Bonnie remembers him. And so in the book, of course, she gets the flag from Bisbee High School. But Bill and I replaced the flag at Bisbee High School and got the real flag and gave it to her in a presentation box with that portrait. So I'm really proud of that book. That book means a lot to me, by the way. So after Randy died, somebody gave Loretta a scholarship to a chaplaincy school. And she sent me an email while she was at the school. And she said, the only thing that makes me sad is that Randy can't be here to see graduate. So, we've got a picture of Randy in his Marine Corps dress uniform. We took it to Michael Reagan. And the night Loretta graduated from chaplaincy school, Randy's portrait is on the chair between us in the front row. I'm making myself cry. So Loretta called me toward the end of 2020, and she told me a story. In the 90s, in the West, there was a serial killer known as a boxcar killer. And he did hate crimes before hate crimes were a thing. And he liked to kill Native Americans. I thought he only pushed people under trains. But in actual fact, at yesterday's Apache Junction, I met a woman whose 9-year-old niece was attacked by the boxcar killer with a knife. And he slit her throat from side to side, but he missed the carotid artery. She was smart enough to lay in, so she survived. But the boxcar killer went around riding boxcars and killing people. He is in prison for 5 homicides at this time. I believe it was several more. So, at some point in the 90s, this guy who was a Native American of Sioux descent was working in the rail yard in some small city in Oregon. He was the son, came into the world with an unwed teenage mother. He was given up for adoption. He was raised by Anglo parents who tried to eradicate everything Native American out of his life, which is one of the reasons they try to keep Native American children adopted into their own culture. Lonnie being an exception, Lonnie Walker being an exception to that rule. But he ended up working in the railroad yard in this city. And that's where he had his encounter with the boxcar killer. He pushed James under a moving train. It was 1.5 miles before the engineer could stop the train. The cops showed up. They pronounced him dead. They zipped him into a body bag and shipped him off to the morgue, which was in the basement of the local hospital. It was a small enough city that one of the nurses who worked in the hospital recognized his name, knew he was a Sioux, and so when her shift got over, she went down to the basement to wash his hair, which is a long-standing Sioux tradition. And when she unzipped the body bag, his arm came because he was dead. He went straight from the morgue to the OR for the first of countless surgeries. And he was airlifted to Portland for more surgeries. He spent months upon months in the hospital. He came away with he was paraplegic. His right arm was gone, so he had to learn to use his left hand. He had to relearn how to speak. He had relearned how to write. He had relearned how to read. And that was where Loretta met him, because doing volunteer work in the hospital, before he learned to read, she went to the hospital and read books to him. And because she was a fan of mine, she read my books to him. And because she loved Howard the Hunter, she read the Walker books to him. James spent the next 20 years counseling disaffected urban indigenous youth in the Portland area, trying to steer them back to the right path. the last time we spoke to Loretta, which was a few months before his death, he said, tell your friend she needs to write more Indian books. There aren't enough Indian heroes. When James died, he went back to the reservation. Didn't go in a transcript. He went wrapped in a buffalo robe. You have goosebumps?
Yes.
So I felt like this was a sacred charge that I had to write this book. So now I'm ready to write the book. But I wanted to have a title. The Walker books have a sort of cadence to them. Hour of the Hunter, Day of the Dead, Kiss of the Bees, Dance of the Bows, Queen of the Night. So I wanted a title that sort of resembled that. But they also have a little bit of irony because you don't think about bees kissing and you don't think about bones dancing. So I lay awake for several nights trying to come up with a title. This is a book about a new federal task force focused on solving the murders of missing and murdered Indigenous girls. So when I couldn't come up with a title, I went to my literary engineer. And I said, I really need a title for this book because I can't start writing it until I have one. He thought about it for all of 5 minutes. He said, Blessing of the Lost Girls. I started writing Blessing the next day. Put the title on the page. I started writing. And I wrote that book beginning to end in 2 months flat. I have lost my mojo. That book is coming out in September. I don't know if I'll be back here in September. I can't tell you. To it. But again, it's a book that was magic to write. It was, the Walker books are like that. When I start writing one of those, the various points of view and the stories and legends that are woven into them are really woven. It's like I'm French braiding a book or I'm writing. And what will happen, I'll get to the end of some scene and I won't know what to do with those characters. So I'll pick up another. And if you've ever French braided hair, that's exactly what you do with braiding. So, Blessing is coming. Collateral Damage is here. And in my mind, they're sort of like twins. I can't talk about one without talking about the other because they were going on creatively at the same time, even though I didn't notice. I was obviously working on that book back in the back of my mind, even though I wasn't actually. So I'm now at work on the next Beaumont book. And you're going to say, wait a minute. Where's Joanna Brady? You just skipped her. But I did, you will find.
Does it keep cutting out for you guys? Yeah. Okay. Hopefully this is a bit better.
Sorry.
Just noticed it.
I didn't know I was being bad. When we started out with Joanna Brady in Desert Heat, that first scene, she's there. Joanna is there in her living, in the kitchen, I think it is. She's there with her mother and Jenny, her 9-year-old daughter. They're waiting for Andy to come home so Joanna and Andy can go to dinner to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary. Jenny is sort of a bright little kid. And they just had a bit of sex ed at Greenway School. And Jenny has counted up the months between her birthday and their anniversary. Aren't quite enough months. So she turns to her mom and said, was I a preemie? Which of course she was not. The wedding was what was late. And that was a question Joanna never wanted to answer, and she especially never wanted to answer it in front of her mother. And the thing that's magic about that scene is that scene set in motion that whole conflict between Joanna and her mother that runs all the way through the books. How did I know to do that? I have no idea. See, writing really is magic. So we started out with Jenny, 9 years old. Now she is a senior in college at Northern Arizona University, where she is majoring in criminal justice. What a surprise. It was a surprise for Mom, that's for sure. And the serial killer in this book, guess who he targets? Young girl racers. So Jenny and Joanna play a role in this Walker book. Jenny is far more front and center in the story than Joanna is. But believe me, I have not skipped and I'm not neglecting Joanna Brady. So, and if some of you I know are really reluctant as far as the Walkers are concerned, wish I could just get over them. I'm not over them, sorry. But maybe having Joanna and Jenny in this Walker book will trick you into reading it. So, I don't know how long I've talked. I feel as though I'm probably running on empty, but do you have any questions? I'll be happy to answer questions as long as I can hear them. No questions? Yeah.
You said you're working on a Beaumont book?
I'm working on a Beaumont. It's Beaumont number 26. It doesn't have a title yet. Another question? No more? Okay, I signed a lot of books to begin with, and I'm kind of tired tonight. I think I'm going to call it a day, and we'll sign whatever books still need to be signed. I want to tell you about the red pen. When I was in original paperback, there was no publisher-sponsored book tour. And so Bill was selling microwave semiconductors in the upper left-hand corner of the map. So when he would go out of town, he'd stop me in the park, and he would go sell semiconductors, and I would go to all the local bookstores and offer to sell books. There were Walden books back then. There were Mortars. There were all the Little Professor. I remember going into a Little Professor somewhere in the LA area, and I would offer to sell stuff. And I walked in, they had several of my books. I said, would you like me to sign your book? So we went to the back room. I heard it say, there's a lady out here. She says she wants to sign her books. I don't know why. So I would go in stores and I would sign books. Well, then somebody would buy those books, and I'd see them, and they would want me to autograph them. So then I had to look around and find the right pen so the ink would match. So by the third book, I started signing in red ink. And so, if some of those J.A. Jance used books, I guess we're supposed to use a little more upscale word for them. Gently used books. If some of those are autographed and you want your name in them, I can fix it and make it seamless. So thank you for coming. So a lot of the people up in the front already had their books signed.